Ghoul friends, it's me, Adrian, or Ayden. Either way, I am still your host, and you are still listening to Susto, the podcast of ooky spooky scary stories centered on paranormal folklore from Latin American and Hispanic cultures. Ghoul friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me once again, and if you are new here, welcome to the Susto fam. Thank you for being here. No, you're not that late. Don't even worry about it. I do have two quick updates, but before that, just some personal fun stuff. I just got back from New Orleans, the day before yesterday. I don't know. I was in New Orleans for a couple days. If you've been here for a while, you know that I've been before, and I absolutely love that city. It's so beautiful. The food is so good. And I got to reunite with some of my best ghoul friends who the three of us had not been in the same room together in 15 years. So it was such a beautiful, healing weekend. It was much needed for my spirit, my mental health, and it was just generally so much fun. So I didn't really do much of content creation. And I know some people might think that's a huge miss because it's one of the spooky capitals of the world. But you know what? That's okay, because September next year, I'm going to be back there. Hopefully before, but for sure September next year, I'll be back there with Beyond the Veil Festival with, of course, one of our nearest and dearest ghoul friends, Lainey Hobbs. And there's of course stuff about that on my social media pages at Susto Podcast, but also you can visit beyondtheveilfest.com. And speaking of things I will be at, next week, September 1st and 2nd, I will be appearing at the 2024 Anomicon. This is a free virtual event, so if you want to learn more beforehand or if you want to attend, just visit anomicon.com. That's ANOMACON.com. It's going to be so fun. Again, I've posted about it on my social media pages, but there is a huge lineup with some really, really cool people, including yours truly. I believe there's going to be musicians, there will be speakers, and it's all virtual. So again, you will be watching everything in video, and then afterward, from what I understand, the entire thing will live on YouTube. And this is being produced by the podcast Somewhere in the Skies. So if you haven't checked it out, please make sure to go listen to them. There are a few other things. Of course, we are getting closer to the thick of spooky season. As you know, that's when I get more busy. So for any and all updates on the show, make sure to follow across every social media platform. That's at Susto Podcast to keep up with any and all updates on the show and where I will be and what I will be doing and who I will be haunting and possessing. But that is about it for now. One more thing I want to talk about before we jump into the show. As you all may have noticed, there are more ads on the show. I have joined a new network which has been allowing me to monetize my show some more. I know that people don't like ads. I know they think they're frustrating and annoying, but as you all know, Susto is 100% independently produced, and ultimately, I would like to get paid for my time and for my work and to reinvest that money in the show. So just a disclaimer I wanted to put out there because this is a change that happened maybe a month ago, and I wanted to address it and not just kind of have it happen, just so you all know what's happening on this side of the mic. But if you are feeling generous and you do not like ads, you can always listen to Susto early and ad-free by signing it to be a paid Patreon subscriber. That's patreon.com/SustoPodcast. There are several tiers and each one comes with a different set of benefits. So if you are into that, if you think that's a possibility for you, feel free to check it out. Otherwise, you can listen to the show for free with a couple ad placements here and there. Either way, thank you all for your support. Thank you for your patience. And we're going to go ahead and continue with today's episode. Today, I will be telling another Susto original. I wrote this story myself, and this is a story based on the legend of Luisón.
Hey, what's up? I'm Charlie.
And I'm Tyler.
And we are Believing the Bizarre,
a paranormal podcast that dives into the unknown and the unusual every Tuesday.
We discuss hauntings, cryptids, aliens, UFO encounters, conspiracies, and more.
And we break down whether or not we find them believable.
All right, listen, if you're not paying for electricity, you're not paying for dinner.
Saw a terrifying looking face pressed to the window with gaping eyes.
Almost reached it when the laughter stopped suddenly, and a sound behind me made me turn around.
Sorry, I was gonna do it, but then I had SpaceX.
So we got you covered, whether you like horror or laughs, or both. We actually really hope it's both.
With over 3 million downloads, you'll be joining a bizarro community that we promise is more than just Mothman and our parents.
We even take creepy stories from our listeners and turn them into episodes.
Check out Believing the Bizarre on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Believing the Bizarre, a podcast as bizarre as you are.
Carlos scanned through radio stations on his Walkman, trying to find something to relax to after a long work week. Friday nights meant video games, a good horror movie, and best of all, sleeping in Saturday morning. He stopped when a news broadcast caught his attention. Investigations are still underway while officials attempt to identify the person responsible for desecrating the final resting places of many individuals in the Reloqueta cemetery. Both affected and unaffected families have been mounting pressure on local authorities and elected officials to increase security and apprehend the person responsible before they strike again. The Paraguay National Police are urging residents of Asunción to remain vigilant around cemetery roads and have imposed a curfew that will prevent visitation to all cemeteries in the capital after sundown until the desecrator has been stopped. Next on KSSTO, an alarming influx of pedestrian attacks. Several people have been found dead and disfigured, leaving authorities to question whether the city is facing a violent individual or an animal of some sort. More on this at 10. Fearmongers. Carlos rolled his eyes and switched stations once more. He had been working 2 jobs for at least a year now to save up for his own place. He kept Saturdays open to catch up on his schoolwork and to look for apartments. Growing up in foster care had been rough for him. He wasn't sure if it would have made things easier if he knew more about his family or not. The only thing he knew was that he had many siblings, that for some mysterious reason, 7 was one too many kids for his birth parents. He had been taken to the agency directly from the hospital. Now, at almost 18, he would have to figure out his next steps without the help or guidance of the 2 people he should have been able to count on the most. It wasn't all bad, he'd remind himself. The foster house he grew up in was a small, all-boys home. Since it was funded by an endowment from the president, there was plenty to go around, including a private bedroom for the boys in their final year. His safe haven, the one place he could drop his shoulders and relax at the end of each day. As Carlos walked, he could feel the stress of the day melting away. He took a deep breath in and choked on something acrid. It smelled like an abandoned butcher shop. The stench of rotting, fermenting flesh filled the air around him and entered his lungs. He gagged and retched as he stumbled forward, trying to escape the thick, sour cloud. "What is this? Ugh!" he shouted. A few more feet and he could finally breathe again, inhaling small and short breaths at first to be sure it wasn't more of the bitter air he'd just encountered. However, his vision had gone blurry and he stumbled like a newborn taking their first steps. Carlos tried to calm himself down and make it home. He was only a few blocks away. He knew he was close when he had to walk by the cemetery. He felt sick and confused. He blinked hard and now he felt scared. He heard a crack nearby, the sound of a branch snapping. "Hello?" He was met with silence for a brief moment, then another snap. Something was moving. He looked around and spun in place while the noise grew louder. Finally, he realized it was coming from inside the cemetery gates. His vision was a little more clear now, but still hazy. He rubbed his eyes and squinted into the gates. "Hey, listen, you're not supposed to be in there. The police are monitoring the cemetery. Some freak is..." Carlos's thought dropped the moment he could make out who or what he was talking to. A slender, unnaturally tall thing rose in the dark, like a dog on its hind legs. Carlos's heart pounded through his chest. It made his head shake with each thump. He and this creature stared at each other and, like they were in sync, ran. Without thinking, and now in survival mode, Carlos bolted down the sidewalk. He could hear the monster get over the cemetery gate and snarl behind him. His backpack was weighing him down, so he let it slide off his arms, sending his Walkman clattering to the ground. He could feel whatever was chasing him gaining on him, and he knew it was only a matter of seconds before he would have to fight it off himself. He remembered his box cutter from work. Moving as fast as he could and trying to not drop his only form of protection, he reached in his pocket and slid it out, thumbing the blade out of its casing. He felt something hit his shoulder and knock him off balance. He hit the ground hard and slid. His shoulder stung, and as he grabbed it, there were holes in his shirt. His hand was warm and slick. This thing had claws, and it slashed him. Before he could think about the pain that began radiating from his shoulder, the dog beast was on him, looking him dead in the eyes. It bore its teeth and lunged down, mouth open, ready to tear into Carlos's face. He threw his hands up and gripped the animal's snout and jaw, one hand holding the top half and the other the bottom. Thirsty for Carlos's blood, it drooled goopy saliva that sparkled in the full moon's light. Carlos looked around for the box cutter. He dropped it when he fell, and it sat just out of his reach. He tried to use his legs to move himself closer, but was pinned under the weight of the creature. It pushed down on him. Its top row of teeth pierced Carlos's palm, and he let out a scream. He wasn't sure where it came from, but a sensation of anger overcame Carlos. He was so close to starting his life. He wasn't sure what that life would look like, if he'd be happy, but he knew it was his life, and he was going to fight tooth and nail to live it. He let his shoulders sink into the ground. He kept his arms outstretched and used the weight of the creature to part its mouth wider. In one swift motion, still gripping the top and bottom of its mouth in his hands, he shot one hand down and one up. He broke the creature's jaw. It yelped and went slack. Carlos's vision started going dark. The pain and the adrenaline crash were setting in, and he passed out. Carlos spent days in the hospital, recovering from what the police called a random violent attack by a madman, that same man they identified as the cemetery desecrator. But this confused Carlos. He wasn't attacked by a man. He tried explaining the creature to them, a humanoid dog beast. The police and the doctors assured Carlos that it was a man, that in response to the traumatic attack, his mind made the man an actual monster. A few weeks passed. Carlos finally started taking night shifts again, and felt okay walking alone. He was excited for his birthday. He already filed his discharge papers with the foster home and had an apartment picked out. He took a deep breath and looked up at the night sky. It was a beautiful night, no clouds and a clear view of the full moon. As its light poured over him, he felt uneasy. It wasn't fear though, it was hunger. Welcome back, old friends. Again, another Susto original. I hope you enjoyed that one. I'm having fun actually writing. I think I'm going to give it a shot each time if I can, but you will know because I'll let you know if it is or isn't a Susto original. But again, today's was, so I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if there are any writers out there, any storytellers, please feel free to reach out, let me know. Or if you just liked it, please give me some encouragement. I do want a golden star. I do want a ribbon, a participation trophy. So there are a few links that I wanted to go through here today. Also, I will say, and I need to start putting like a little kind of credit reel at the end of the episodes. This episode and the last episode, you all may know him, you may have heard of him, you may have even met him. My unpaid intern, part-time assistant, full-time lover, Jeffrey, helped me with these episodes. He helped me by doing some research and by editing some of the writing. So my research assistant / story editor, Jeffrey Doyle, thank you so much. I love you for helping me with today's story. So he put some notes here before we go through the links. The first note is that there are two Luisons, basically. So what that means is that there is the original one, which is the god of death from Guarani mythology, and we're going to go through that right now. And then the second one is the current day cryptid influenced by that myth, by the Guarani mythology, and by the werewolf from Europe. And I'm sure you probably saw that kind of, I would hope that that came across like, oh, this is a werewolf, basically. We're going to probably see some of this before. And again, you can see these notes and the links and the outline and the story in the Susto Google Docs if you have access to that on patreon.com/Susto podcast. Jeff wrote here, the character is originally from Guarani mythology. The Guarani are the indigenous people of Paraguay who had fully developed culture and mythology systems. In their mythology, the Luisón is the seventh child of the evil god Tao and the human woman Gerena. It's not 100% sure about whether they were married and willingly had children, or if Tao kidnapped Gerena and abused her and forced her to have children. This is due to the fact that this legend was passed down by word of mouth because the Guarani did not use a writing system to preserve their stories, so there are variations. Either way, their children were cursed by Arasi, the goddess of the sky, to be monsters. The 7th child they had was named Luisón. He was born as a giant evil dog and given the role of the god of death. The Guarani believed that if you saw the Luisón, you were doomed to die. It would then eat your corpse. The myth evolved as European culture influence spread in South America, and the Luisón slowly combined with the werewolf myth. In its current form, the legend of a Luisón is that the curse has spread beyond the original Luisón and continues to this day to impact the 7th son in a family. On the night of his 13th birthday, the 7th son will transform into a Luisón and will seek out dead bodies to feed on. Like a werewolf, the transformation would happen every full moon, and the cursed son would seek out either corpses, excrement, unbaptized babies, or innocents to eat. There isn't consistency in what it eats, likely since it has become an amalgamation of various myths. It is still believed that a Luisón seen as a large black dog or werewolf is an omen of death. If it gets close enough to you, it will emit a horrible smell to try to drive you insane so that it can hunt you. If it catches you, it will eat both your body and soul, leaving the soul cursed to never reach heaven. If it only bites/scratches you and you get away, you could now be cursed to become a Luisón. Families are now terrified of having a 7th son and, this is disputed, would kill their 7th son to prevent the curse from impacting their family. One loophole was that if the 7th son was adopted to another family, he would be saved. A folk tale from Paraguay was that the president would unofficially adopt every 7th son in order to save the country from this curse. This was done to prevent any harm coming to the 7th son in a family, and the practice was eventually extended to 7th daughters as well in 1973. There is some slight truth to this, because again, that's just kind of myth or like local legend. So it says there is some slight truth to this in that the president functioned as a godparent to the kids, but this was just a custom and not a law. The Luisón myth has spread to nearby countries and will also be known as the Lobisón in Argentina and Lobisomem in Brazil. And I know in some languages it's Lobisón or Luisón with the squiggly line accent over the O. You'll see it in the title. So amazing notes on the story right there. Let's go into the links that we have here. We have a few. So the first one, it's just a good old Wikipedia entry. This one's a short one. This says the Luisón or Luisõ, again with that accent over the O in Guarani, Luisón or Lobisón in Spanish, is one of 7 legendary beasts of Paraguay and is the 7th and last son of Tao and Carana. The myth says that in a family with 7 male children, the last child will become Luisón. And this is where it kind of gets, I think, a little muddy to me or confusing is what exactly are the rules? I think I spoke about this with Stephanie and on Getting Strange with Stephanie Strange on her show. There's so many rules for these spirits and demons. You know, for demons, which are these entities of chaos and whatever, or monsters, they sure do follow a lot of rules. But so here it says a family with 7 male children. And then in other instances, it's a family and if the 7th child is a boy. And then suddenly in 73, it was open to, it could just be the 7th child regardless of gender. I'm not sure what exactly the rule is there, but something with the 7th child. Speaking of these kids, I want to know who each of their children are. Okay, here it is. The 7 children in order of birth. This is again another Wikipedia entry. It says the 7 children were in order of birth. I want to know how to say these right. So the first one is Teju Jagua, a half lizard, half dog creature considered lord of caverns. The second one is Boitui, a giant snake with the head of a parrot. The third one, and I'm going based on pronunciations from what I'm finding online, is Monyi, a giant horned snake said to be the lord and protector of the fields. Number 4 is Jasi Jatere, lord of the siesta. Number 5 is Kurupi, god of sexuality. Number 6 is Awao, who appeared as perhaps a monstrous sheep or peccary. And number 7 is Luisón, of course, a dog-like human, aka the Lord of Death. Shout out to this website. It popped up several times for many of these and actually it says it's the Guarani pronunciation. It's forvo.com where I put in all of these names to try and pronounce them correct. So to continue, the next link that we have is from the wiki fandom of Luisón, and this may cover some of the stuff that was in the show notes. It says that Luisón, Luisõ, or Lobisón is the name of a monstrous creature from Guarani mythology, being one of the 7 cursed children, of course, of Tao and Carana. One of the primary figures of legend in Guarani-speaking cultures today, such as Paraguay, of the original myth of the Guarani people, the Luisón is one of the few whose story has changed significantly in modern times. The name of Luisón is a variation of Lobisón, a name used in Argentina and Uruguay to describe the werewolf or a similar creature, which is itself a variation of the Brazilian name for the werewolf, the Lobisomem, more literally wolfman. What name Luisón may have had prior to the influence of European-based mythology is likely lost to the world. Guarani was not a written language, and all myths passed on in storytelling only. Thus, no written record of his original name would have been made. So unfortunately, I wish we had that. I wish we knew what it was. But Luisón is the earliest or the closest to its original name. And I don't want to, maybe not closest in terms of what it sounds like, what it was spelled like, what the word is, but just it came right after the original name of Luisón, which you can tell also by listening and looking through the names of Luisón's 6 other monstrous siblings. His name is pretty different compared to theirs. This continues, Luisón was said to be the lord of the night and was associated with death. His habitat was limited exclusively to cemeteries, burial grounds, or other locations similarly tied in with the concept of death, and his sole source of food was dead and rotting flesh. Lord of Death, he hung around places where death was prominent, so of course cemeteries. I wonder if anyone's seen him in a funeral home or hospitals or, places where death happens more often than other areas. This continues, in some version, Luisón only appears on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. Okay, hybrid schedule. Luisón also filled the same function as the Grim Reaper in many European societies, and it was said that the touch of his cold, clammy hand was a sure sign that one's days on the earth were numbered. With the arrival of European settlers, aka colonizers, in the area came myths and legends not indigenous to the Guarani people. Over the time, the myth of Luisón slowly began to mix with the imported legend of the werewolf, to the point where Luisón began to lose many of his associations with death. In many areas of the Guarani-speaking world, the Luisón's description has changed to that of a half-man, half-dog creature, and now bears many similarities to the classical werewolf story. So definitely the story that I wrote was leaning more towards the modern interpretation or understanding of the Luisón. Modern tales of a Luisón that hunts by the light of the moon is no longer confined to cemeteries and may hunt living victims down for food. It is sometimes also believed that the curse of the Luisón may be transferred to other victims via biting, such as the curse of the werewolf. So again, in the story, Carlos gets scratched and also technically bitten because as he's holding the Luisón's mouth open with part of his palm, his teeth pierce his palm, right? So I guess that's technically a bite. This continues, in part, the transition from the original myth to a more werewolf-like creature is because Luisón was the 7th son. The 7th son, especially in Paraguay, was thought to be cursed or to become a werewolf. And again, that's where I made that connection to writing the story, is that Carlos's parents thought that 7 children was one too many. And so he was given up for adoption because, again, the belief was that if the 7th child or the child thought to be affected by the curse was adopted, that it would save them from the curse. Okay, so moving on about the appearance of the Luisón, it says that he was of vaguely human appearance, but said to be extremely ugly, even horrendous looking. Luisón had long, dirty hair that fell down to cover most of his form, pale and sickly-looking skin and eyes, and accompanied by the constant, fetid odor of death and decay. So frightening and repulsive was his appearance that his mere presence would instill terror in any unfortunate enough to encounter the beast. That's for that one. The next one is, and again, all direct links are on, again, Susto Google Docs. So the next link doesn't say too much different from the ones before. This is another wiki fandom. It's from The Demonic Paradise, and it's their Luisón entry. But I think what is of note, or what is really interesting with this story is, again, the influence of colonialism, of European mythology and beliefs on indigenous mythology and belief, and how it's kind of transformed. But either way, they were similar for some reason. Like, they started kind of similar, but then of course the Guarani Luisón mythology kind of adopted more European influence, more werewolf influence. But I think it is still really interesting that they kind of started similar. These kind of like canine lycanthrope, kind of at the base they're like dog creatures. This next one is from a website called mythology.com, and this is called El Luisón of Guarani mythology, Paraguay. So this has a little bit more of the same, but there are some other interesting facts in here. It says, the Guarani people are one of the longest lasting Aboriginal groups located in South America, specifically in large parts of Paraguay, Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia. For most of its history, Guarani mythology was oral, making it almost impossible to know how and when the legends started. This has also led to multiple variations of the legend that range widely in detail. In fact, the original name for this creature is not El Luisón or Lobisón, as that original name is likely lost to history. This is more about the Luisón's parents, Tao and Kirana, but this also says that Kirana was the beautiful granddaughter of one of the first humans. Again, in some versions, Tao kidnaps her and forces her to have the children, and in others, they choose to marry and she's willingly part of that family. But regardless, their marriage was forbidden. And that is why this Arasi goddess placed that curse on them, who I'm kind of interested in. Let me see what this is. Again, this is from Wiki Fandom, and this is from Fictional Indexing Wiki, and the entry is Arasi, Brazilian mythology. Let me see if I'm pronouncing her name right. I had it right, Arasi. It says that Arasi is the Guarani goddess of the sky. From her home in the moon, she saw Tupa, god of creation, who lived in the sun. The two met and married, and then went down to the earth to create people. Arasi and Tupa together created the first man, Rupave, and the first woman, Sipave. Arasi's name means day mother. Okay, cool. So she's kind of like one of the main goddesses, right? So she saw this relationship and said, nope, that's not okay. And I guess maybe as a way to try and prevent them from having children was like, your kids are going to be cursed. But they went for it and they just had cursed monstrous children. Tao is the name of an evil spirit in South American Guarani mythology. Although Tao is not quite synonymous with the devil in Christian beliefs, for example, he was sometimes referred to as the evil spirit, and as such may have been a personification of evil itself. Tao was created along with his opposite. I can't find a pronunciation online for this, but I'm thinking it's Angatupiri, by the supreme god of the Guarani creation myth, Tupa, and was left with humanity on earth. So kind of he's like the evil spirit. Okay, got it. This makes a little bit more sense to me. So this continues. Again, he was the seventh and last child, so he took the final brunt of the curse, and he was considered the most hideous of the siblings of those creatures. He became the god or the lord of death, and in some legends, if you see him, it means someone close to you will die shortly. So again, this omen of death, there's many of them in all these cultures. La Llorona, La Lechuza, Luisón. He is seen like a grim reaper, and once someone dies, the Luisón would then feed on their corpse before it drags it away. As the centuries went on, the Luisón's myth became closer to that of the common werewolf. Again, once more because of the influence of European settlers. Also, once more, there's this detail of the 13th birthday. So this says that, I guess, as soon as someone becomes a teenager, that's when they're able to transform. It says the Luisón was now a human until its 13th birthday, when it gained the ability to transform into a demonic werewolf during a full moon. Afterward, on Tuesdays and Fridays, again, hybrid schedule, we love that, the Luisón would go out and spread its curse to unsuspecting victims. In these versions of the legend, the Luisón emits a nauseating smell, and if the sight of it scares you, the fear will drive you insane. When it is unable to find the flesh of dead animals or humans to eat, it will attack, but not only does it kill its victims, it eats their souls. This causes them to become cursed as well. The Luisón was also known, this is really interesting, for feeding specifically on unbaptized children if they cannot find a meal, something that undoubtedly evolved from the influence of Catholicism as it spread in South America. So again, these Catholic colonizers came to these indigenous people and I'm sure put this fear in them or even in their own people before they traveled and were like, well, if your kid is unbaptized, the Luisón, the werewolf, whatever, this monster, it's going to get your baby. So dip your baby in that holy soup and make sure that they're baptized. The name Lobisón is derived from Lobisomem, which translates again to wolfman. So you can see where the European influence changed the original legends. So this is also a legend in Argentina. So it's pretty much the same, but this part of the entry says that in the 1900s, it was said the president of Argentina began adopting the seventh son of any Catholic family in order to prevent their deaths. This also apparently broke the curse and helped curb the child killings in superstitious families. The practice of the president, quote, adopting the children became a tradition and later law in 1974. Despite several news articles reporting this as fact, it turns out that the origin of the president adopting the seventh child of the family was not rooted in the myth of El Lobisón. In 2014/2015, after several reports of that Argentinian President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner adopted a Jewish child to save him from the curse, The Guardian published a story clarifying that this was not the case. So, adopted for some other reason. In reality, sorry to burst your bubble, there is no, quote, adopting, and there never has been an adoption. Instead, the president becomes the unofficial godparent of the seventh child of a family. This was/is a tradition that started in the early 20th century and has nothing to do with the Lobisón. According to Argentina historian Daniel Balmaceda, the tradition started in 1907 after several Russian immigrants asked the then Argentina president to become the godfather of their seventh son. The president agreed, and it became a tradition, with one president, Juan Perón, becoming godfather to 1,982 children while in office. So the next one that we have is again from Argentina, it looks like. This is from smithsonianmag.com, and it says Argentina has a superstition that seventh sons will turn into werewolves. If the president adopts them, however, the seventh sons are spared from their werewolf fate. Again, we know that that is not entirely true, but this is published in 2014, Smithsonian Magazine, and again, already there's an update here. It says, update, according to The Guardian, there is a superstition about werewolves and seventh sons. Quote, according to some versions of the myth, the seventh son of the seventh son. And here's another like family structure rule. So now it's the seventh son of a seventh son is particularly prone to fall victim to the curse. How about we stop having 7 kids? How about that? I feel like that's too, I don't know. That's my personal taste. I feel like that's maybe too many. This says, but that seventh son myth is not connected to the seventh son adoption tradition. Say seventh son 7 times fast. Oh my goodness, so many kids. I can barely handle Margaret. So this is pretty much saying a lot of what we went over already. But here this says, in Guarani mythology, the Lobisón is the offspring of Thao, an evil spirit, and Kirana, we know that, a mortal woman. In the cultures that believe in the Lobisón, that creature acts as a sort of grim reaper whose mere presence means that death will soon befall those it comes to contact with. Again, we know that. As The Independent explains, by the 19th century, fear of this creature was so acute in Argentina that families sometimes murdered their 7th sons to prevent the legend from coming true. This reminds me kind of like the whole lechuza effect and how sometimes people will capture owls and harm them. And I don't think we should be doing that. Hot take, let's not kill animals and people, right? But again, this creature was so believed and so feared, this curse, that people didn't want to risk it, and so they took it to that level. This says, so in 1907, in an attempt to stop this practice, the Argentinian president began adopting 7th sons. This is the part that they updated, is that this, in fact, was not related to the Lobisón curse. But I wonder then why? I don't know. In addition, being able to say he's the president's godson, Tawil will receive a gold medal and enjoy a full educational scholarship. In modern times, the curse, it seems, is more aptly described as a blessing. So again, we know now that this is from the influence of Russian immigrants that were coming over and saying, hey, be the godfather to be the godparent to our 7th child or whatever. And for some reason, the president at the time was like, sure, that sounds like a fun tradition. Let's get that started. But also it was around the same time that people were allegedly harming their 7th child to prevent this curse. So again, it's just like this, everything kind of funneled up to this one spot, and someone decided, oh, okay, this is happening because of this, versus it was just a coincidence that it was happening at the same time. The last link that I have here is from Britannica.com, and this is just an entry on the Guarani people because I wanted to read more about them. We're talking about a story from their culture and talking about them and some of their beliefs. So this says, Guarani, South American Indian group living mainly in Paraguay and speaking a Tupian language, also called Guarani. Smaller groups live in Argentina, Bolivia, and Brazil. Modern Paraguay still claims a strong Guarani heritage, and more Paraguayans speak and understand Guarani than Spanish. Most of the people who live along the Paraguay River around Asunción, which is the capital of Paraguay, speak Guarani, which, with Spanish, is an official language of Paraguay. At the turn of the 21st century, the Guarani in South America numbered nearly 5 million. The Aboriginal Guarani inhabited eastern Paraguay and adjacent areas in Brazil and Argentina. They lived in a manner common to Indians of the tropical forest. Women maintained fields of corn, cassava, and sweet potatoes, while men hunted and fished. The practice of slash-and-burn agriculture required that they relocate their thatched house settlements every 5 or 6 years. As many as 60 patriarchs matrilineally related families inhabited each of the 4 to 6 large houses that composed a village. The Guarani were warlike and took captives to be sacrificed and, it is alleged, to be eaten. So interesting. So is now this story influenced by this alleged custom that they had of eating the people that they captured? Because then the Luisón, this creature, he eats people, I think, but more traditionally he ate the corpses, flesh of the dead. I wonder, if they're captive, if they're warlike and they capture these people, chances are they're going to kill them because they're the enemy, right? So then if they're going to kill them, might as well eat their flesh. I don't know. Could be a connection there. This continues in the 14th and 15th centuries. Some Tupian speakers migrated inland to the Rio de la Plata, where they became the Guarani of Paraguay. A few scattered communities of pure, quote, pure Guarani Indians still survive marginally in the forests of northeastern Paraguay, but these were rapidly dwindling in the late 20th century. The best known of them were the Apapocuva. Paraguay's cultural nationalism emphasizes the continuity of Guarani customs, language, and habits of mind. In reality, however, the Spanish colonial way of life early engulfed the Guarani, and no truly indigenous customs have survived except the now much altered language. As with many cases, I don't know, maybe it's just part of me is hopeful that some of it has to survive, right? And I would think it would be okay if it was kept secret or hidden so that as to not lose it more, because we don't know what would happen. Okay, and it looks like that's the last of the links that I have. Welcome back, Ghoul friends. Thank you so much for listening. And again, Susto Original, let me know what you think, if you enjoyed it, any tips, any feedback. I'm always looking for feedback, especially on the Susto Originals. I'm having fun writing them, and this was a really cool story. Once again, thank you to Jeffrey for assisting in research and story editing. If you liked today's episode, you can support it many ways. The easiest way to support it is by following or subscribing wherever you're listening. Leave a rating or a review, commenting, sharing with your friends and family, with your own network of ghoul friends. If you have your own scary story, please make sure to send that in to me, either by DM on social media. That's at Susto Podcast across every platform. You can visit my website, sustopodcast.com, hit the contact button, or send a voicemail that's off to the right side of the page. You can send an email to sustopodcast@gmail.com. You can leave it in a 5-star review on Apple, or you can leave it in a comment on Spotify. Or if you get a Caniac combo from Cane's, and you put a chicken strip at each point of a pentagram, and you put a big tub of cane sauce in the center, I will appear, and then you can tell me your story there. It also doesn't have to be a story. You can send in a video, photo, audio, recording, anything you think is spooky that I should share on a Letters from the Beyond episode or on the Susto social medias. Please send that in to me. Again, make sure to catch me at Anomicon September 1st and 2nd. It's going to be really cool, really fun. Follow along on social media for any and all updates. The easiest way to support the show is by engaging with it wherever you're listening, engaging with it online. But if you are feeling extra generous, we love that. You can support by visiting patreon.com/SustoPodcast and signing up to be a paid Patreon subscriber. Again, many benefits with that, like listening to this episode early and ad-free. And this episode's patrons are Liza, Sadie, Rachel, Alejandra, Luther, April, Mario, Eva, Dee, Josette, Sam, Angela and Co, Mandy, Jules, Lori, Jeannie, Desiree, Anna C, Ashes, Neresa, Rachel, Azucena, Rios, Marlene, Chata, Lainey, Desiree, Cynthia, Serena y Flamenca, Belinda, Isaiah, Archer, Ricardo, and Sarah. Thank you so much for supporting this episode. It means the underworld to me. I will talk to you all in the next one, and until then, no te asustes. Bye.